Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first session of the third day of Event Tech Live US and Canada here on the Smart Stage. Joining me from Italy is Simona, the co-founder of Interactio, who've just raised investment to take multilingual events to the next level. Simona, welcome to Event Tech Live.
Thank you, Adam. Good to see you this time online and not physically anymore, but really happy to be here.
Good, good. So this session, multilingual events, you're going to be sharing best practice with us and actually how to know if we need multilingual at our event. So I'm going to hand over to you now. The floor is yours. Look forward to hearing more on multilingual events.
Thank you very much, Adam. So welcome, everybody. I think people are tuning in little by little. So feel free to be active and leave your questions so we can make this more entertaining, more engaging. I can imagine that some of you are just discovering the option of making multilingual events. Some of you are already organizing events that have multilingual speakers or multilingual participants. So today we will cover all the reasons why to have or not to have a multilingual meeting in general. We'll cover some case studies from the clients that we have to see how they did it. It's another aspect of load for the event organizer in a way. But in some cases, it more than makes sense. It's a huge return on investment. In some cases, it could be that it does not make sense for you. And for those who will be interested to make their own multilingual event at some point, I'll share some tips from our 7 years of experience in the industry, providing multilingual events, the tools that they need. So hi, I'm Simona, co-founder at Interactio. And let me jump into the next slide, if this works. Yes. So just short background to understand where all of the insights are coming from, and what I will be talking about in the context is that at Interactio, we are working with remote simultaneous interpretation, which was a new thing up to before this new niche, new market. Simultaneous interpretation used to happen only on site, which is also one of the options to make multilingual meetings. So our journey is to enable 7 billion or maybe even soon 8 billion people to converse in their preferred languages. Let's move on. And just for you to get the context, we're currently making around 2,000 events per month, and that number is constantly growing, which for us shows that globalization is happening, that more and more of our clients, institutions, event organizers, corporates, they are choosing to communicate in a multilingual way. We find it very interesting that up to COVID, around 50% of our events used to happen for the organizers that never had multilingual meetings before. In a way, that showed statistical evidence. There is huge probably for that. Once COVID hit, many of our meetings that we support happen to be institutional meetings, and for them, multilingual communication, it's not an option. It's a part of the political democracy in a way to be able to provide multilingual meetings. So let us get into some of the insights. So today, this is what I want to cover. We kind of went through the agenda, some RSI event tips, use cases, and why do people even decide to make multilingual meetings in the first place. So the industry trends in general shows very interesting statistics, I would say. It looks like 94% of our population does not speak English as their preferred first language. This is their second, third, or even further language that they speak. In majority of the events that I attend, that probably many of you attend, the original language is English, and we assume that many people understand it, and that is true. However, not that many people find it to be their native language, which probably also raises quite interesting challenges, since some research actually shows that when you are communicating or listening, receiving content not in your original native language, you're likely to miss out on pieces of information, and you find it way easier to find it in native language. However, supporting argument is that 75% of our population does not speak English at all. And this is a very surprising number, which shows that if, in fact, majority of your events are actually happening in English, because we assume that majority of the people actually speak this language, it can be that we're missing out on a huge portion, huge population of people in the world who do not comprehend English, and they might not attend your events only because of that reason. And then very interesting research was done by Yale University a while ago about churches and multiracial congregations. In a way, they analyzed the churches that meet and they are segregated. So they have certain sermons for certain ethnicities and languages, and the ones that actually have interracial, multicultural, multinational congregations. And the differences were significant. It looks like the content that we receive around us and the people that we meet changes our environment significantly. So the churches that were multilingual, that were multiracial, they actually led to having more interracial marriages, statistically less crime rates, higher attendance in general, and it looks like they create this feeling of belonging. And what was very interesting is that for us, at the beginning, maybe you heard the story, our primary market, primary clients were multilingual churches in US. And up to now, we work with around 200 churches that are multilingual and decided to kind of integrate minorities into their communities. And we found it extremely interesting because for us, in terms of a setup, it's like separate events. It's even conferences when they organize ones. But the content that goes to those people, you don't have to be religious to actually understand that the content affects those people a lot, and they kind of find what they believe in there. So for us, when we started, we saw that we are replacing hardware into software. But when we started to work with churches that are providing multilingual aspect, integrating minorities who are elsewise segregated in their own country sometimes, we realized after reading the comments after those events that churches are organizing, we realized that the message touches people significantly, and it actually encourages them to feel part of the community. You can sit next to each other even though you speak different languages, where in the past there used to be separate sermons, separate meetings for Spanish speakers and English speakers, let's say. And that brought in significant changes. We have seen stories where content that they received there changed their perception of life. Like we had some potential suicide stories that were turned different side. We had some potential divorce story where they actually were able to change their minds after attending a sermon that was done in their own language, so they didn't miss any meaning in between the lines. And this was very, very interesting. Churches, in a way, like kind of showed us the content, how powerful it can be at times, and also definitely it touches the topic of the diversity. So in the study that I mentioned on Yale University, they kind of like the results were very much correlated with the impact of the diversity. Like when you see what diversity aspect can bring to the community, to the gatherings, to the content that's being shared. It's very much related with more proactive leadership, inclusion, adaptability, and in general, I would say even increased values in some cases, more relationships, like different relationships, different experiences. So if we're thinking about how to improve the content result that we want to share in our meetings, the inclusion aspect in general is a very strong one to think about, how to make sure that all the people in the event feel more included, feel more accepted. And then we had similar result in a way with TEDx events, with the conference world. At the beginning, for many years, we're actually already the partners of TED Network, TEDx events. And some of them, definitely not all of them, but some of them provides interpretation, provides multilingual aspect to the events. We had a story where additional languages actually help them to attract wider audiences. And I even happened to be in one of the local events in Lithuania, in Vilnius. And by the rule, we used to make most of their events in English. And I met some friends of mine who brought in their kids, and this 14-year-old boy was sharing the story how he was able to listen to some scientific event that was in English and could understand every word. 14-year-old boy from the school, he could understand some of the English, right? But when we talk about some scientific event, scientific topic, he would have missed out so much. Now it can be that he has a different career shift after that because he gets inspired by it. What happened is that TEDx Vilnius organizers also shared with us that second year, for the first year, they provided interpretation to the local language and to English for the foreigners as well, to be able to switch. Next year, they decided to include the languages that the minorities in that town speak. So Russian and Polish was also included, and guess what? Completely different audience gathered. So the people who otherwise wouldn't be included, wouldn't be invited, wouldn't be seeing the access to the content, they actually came, and they had to expand the arena, the town hall, the place where the event was meeting, so that all the people could fit. So that is very interesting when we talk about, in general, like how to attract wider audiences through minorities inclusion. Multilingual aspect of the event could be definitely one of the topics to consider. And then if you ask, so why do event organizers in general enable multilingual events? We covered two different topics. We covered what do churches, multilingual churches do, and one particular case of TEDx. But in general, like what are the key topics when we talk to our clients, when we talk to many event organizers, we try to see, so why are they choosing multilingual meetings? And this is basically your checklist to look through and see if any of those things tick and apply to you. If so, it makes sense for you to consider a multilingual event. If not, it can be that you are organizing a niche event, something that does not need wider audience or any of the listed things. So let's go through it. I'll give a few examples, and you can actually take notes and see if you tick any of this box, so that you can make a decision if multilingual meetings is something that you should consider. So first of all, one of the most referred reason usually is inclusivity and accessibility. So we talked a little bit already about diversity, right? What that gives to the event, to any topic, to the content, to the gathering. So inclusivity in general is a very interesting topic, and here we definitely think about the minorities, especially in the places where you know that in a city, in a town, in a country that the event is happening in, that they have certain language barriers, that they might have some minorities who otherwise wouldn't even attend. So content is one part, right? Like it can be that I will not attend an event if I don't understand the language. But it can be that English is my second language and I kind of understand it, but I still wouldn't come because all the content is in English. Because it's not, I'm not that good at it, or I don't like particularly English or like some other language, right? And this is here the topic of inclusivity comes in, because when you are providing an event with a particular language interpretation, in a way it's like an invitation to many people, because it's one thing when we talk about conferences, right? That I will be able to listen to the interpretation, to the speech in my own language. But it's another topic when we talk about a meeting where participants are speaking different languages. Would you give them the access to talk to uh, multilingual context in general? And we have multiple online meetings where actually participants are choosing to provide different languages. I could be speaking English, and the other person I talk to could be speaking French back to me, and we listen to the interpreter in our ears, and this is how we talk. So this kind of gives us inclusive access, because I'm able to tell all that I'm capable of telling in my own language. Otherwise, if I have a limitation of certain language, it could be a limit, could be quite a big limit. So, so inclusivity is definitely one of the topics. Accessibility is very related, but even further one, because many institutions like UN are actually like dedicating a lot of time for this, and they even have resources like separate departments working towards making sure that everybody has access towards communication. Then we talk about more aha moments. So if your event is about content, let's face it, there are some events where people just gather for the networking, and speeches are nice to have thing, but it's not the essence. Then it can be that multilingual aspect is not really even needed there. But in the cases where you have an event where content is everything, where people are actually coming for the content, this is where event experience can become way stronger, because I can understand more simply, even if I speak English as my third language. Then expanding audience and expanding the reach is definitely the important aspect. If this is one of your goals, to expand globally, you can even, now with the hybrid meetings, with the online meetings that we're having, it's also possible to target different geography locations if you are able to provide that things. And then definitely the different speakers. So we have many conferences where speakers are speaking their native language, and this allows you to have a larger variety of professionals. Otherwise, if your event is only supporting one language, it can be that your pool of speakers is simply a little bit limited. So those are the key checkboxes. Check it out if any of those apply to you. It can be that you should be organizing a multilingual event or considering it. And then, so the question is, what are your options? What type of multilingual meetings are out there? So first of all, definitely you need to decide on what type of event you want to make, right? Is it an online meeting, on-site, or hybrid? If we're talking about online meetings, then remote interpretation is one of the two options probably. So remote simultaneous interpretation is something that multiple remote simultaneous interpretation platforms are offering. How it works is that you need like a separate tool or a separate platform where interpreter connects. So usually those platforms are providing interpreters and like the full service. So interpreters are seeing what you see on a Zoom meeting or their own platform meeting. You don't see them, but you hear them. So you choose the language as a participant, and you hear the interpreter's voice instead. They interpret like with a few seconds delay, and you can basically hear it live in any preferred language. If we're talking about on-site event, Your options are hardware, interpretation. So basically you need to contact audiovisual providers, and they usually rent out simultaneous interpretation equipment. And there's also an option to have remote simultaneous interpretation, the same as in an online setup where people are actually, instead of using receivers, the radios, they're using the phones. Click one play button and listen to the interpretation in multiple languages. On-site events also have another way cheaper option to provide consecutive interpretation, where interpreter, the person doing translating the event in an audio format, is standing on the stage. So the only problem is that the length of the meeting kind of doubles because speaker needs to wait until interpreter translates. But the length is definitely way longer, but the price is way cheaper. So if you're limited on a budget, you could consider this option. And for the hybrid meetings, right now, probably the only option is remote simultaneous interpretation scenarios, where your online attendees can use apps. Your interpreters could be either online or on-site, and you can use hardware together with a software. So those are the options in general. And basically a few tips for you if you decide to do a multilingual event. So first of all, make sure to schedule your interpreters in advance. Make sure to schedule interpretation, decide about multilingual interpretation in advance. This way you could get more quality. You can choose the voices of interpreters. You can actually make sure that the attendees have the maximum experience. Then make sure, this is very important one, if you want a quality, I suggest to share the event material with interpreters in advance. It looks like obvious thing that interpreters need to prepare for this, but really many event organizers leave it for the last minute, and then you cannot really expect the best top quality. But that helps. If you're able to share event material with interpreters in advance, you'll have the best possible quality. Your attendees will be happy. Informing speakers about simultaneous interpretation could help, because if I knew that was interpreted, I may speak a little bit slower. I may articulate better. And then it also connects to the second one to make sure that the speakers are actually using quality microphones. Because it's very often appearing that interpreters cannot do their quality job if microphones are not used, if the external microphone is used, just a laptop microphone for the online meetings. And then if we're talking about on-site events, some of our clients actually have disposable earbuds that they would give away in the meeting, in the conference. They would even brand them and give it as a takeaway. And then also portable batteries. One of our clients, Mary Kay, they actually make a portable battery to charge your phone in the shape of a lipstick, because it matches with what they do. And that's a very, very nice marketing idea on the top of actually giving accessibility to their attendees. And then this was one of the cases that we had with European Commission. They were fundraising for the vaccine. Maybe you saw that. It was a huge event back in last May. What they did was a very interesting setup. They were actually using interactive platform sort of in the back, and then their developers, their broadcasting teams actually put it on their website so that it was kind of live with multiple language selections available. And that is quite often used, where you kind of integrate, if you want to make this available for everybody, and it's like a TV setup scenario, this can be done in a very interesting way. We had multiple cases like this. And then another beautiful example that we had was with Web Summit, where they actually, this jumped a little bit, but I go back, where they actually had their app like the audio streaming app that was put also inside of their own app. So basically, you can have integration in your event app that actually covers the different languages. And you can see that they actually were streaming the whole session. So you can choose the language, click a play button. As you can see, you can scroll and you can have another session, another room happening at the same time. And it was all customized. So basically, you can have beautiful logo, and it's a good experience for the attendees because when it was very crowded, people could listen to any speech, not necessarily interpretation of it. So it was used for the audio streaming simply for many cases, because that was an event with 70,000 people. So those were the key takeaways. I know that our time is running up. I hope that was useful. And we can see if we had any questions, and maybe Adam, you had some that we can review.
Hi, Simona. Great presentation, and I've had the pleasure of working with you at previous Event Tech Live as well. So, trust in the technology. These guys are great. We do have some questions here. The first one, is the audio recorded for on demand? Because that's quite a big part of, I guess, online events now. People being able to kind of jump back into the content, or if they missed a session, does the translation get recorded, and is it made available in some way? Can it be made available in some way?
Very good question. Yes, and this is a very often requested feature, I would say, the recordings, so we can provide that in the audio format, but also in a video.
Awesome. Okay. Um, can your technology be used for interpretation between two different people speaking two different languages in like an online meeting setting? Is that possible?
Exactly. That's exactly what we do very often. So majority of the European institutions do that on a daily basis, where, as I was saying, like I would speak one language and my other participants would be speaking different languages, and we listen not to each other, but to actually interpreters that are interpreting
Okay.
our languages live. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Perfect. We have another question. Um, can somebody's asked here, can we have access to where the research was done on a number of primary languages? Is that something that you can make available to the attendees?
If the organizer or attendee can see how many languages were actually listened to.
Yeah, I'll read it again. Can we have access to where the research was done on the number of primary languages? So I think that was a little bit earlier in your presentation. If not, we'll come back. We can
Uh,
come back to that one.
yes, maybe we can.
Okay. And final question, putting you on the spot. I know it's probably really hard to answer this. People are wanting ballpark figures on kind of services and technologies. You can probably imagine. Somebody's asked, how much would it cost for Interactio to interpret three languages for me to about 3,500 attendees?
That's a brilliant question. But if that person could contact us, we could
Yep.
probably do a bit better math, because it depends on the number of the languages that will be needed, because they have
Okay.
different prices as well.
Yep.
But
Okay.
please
Okay.
reach us out. My email is s@interactive.io. We'll be happy to connect with my colleagues.
There you go. So whoever that question was from, whoever's watching, do reach out to Simona. You can do that on her email on the platform. Simona, thank you very much for coming and talking to us about multilingual events and being very open and honest about how to decide whether you actually need it and where it suits and all that kind of stuff. To everybody watching, please do connect up with the Interactio team, and we will see you in the next session. Simona, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Adam. It was great. Thank you. Bye bye.